Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn. I'm Lauren Smith with the International Franchise Association, and we have a great 30 minutes lined up for you. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that we're recording today's webinar and will make it available later this evening on community.franchise.org. If you have any questions for today's speakers, please add them to the Q&A box at any time, and they will be addressed toward the end. Today's topic is Connecting the Dots, Partners in the Franchise Ecosystem, and it is brought to us by Benetrends. Here to provide today's discussion is Ali Kraus, VP of Marketing at Benetrends, Marissa Frois, CEO of the Entrepreneur Source, Daniel Prendergast, Career Ownership Coach at the Entrepreneur Source, and Todd Harris, Restoration One Franchisee. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you to Benetrends for sponsoring today's Lunch and Learn. I'll go ahead and turn things over to you.
Thanks, Lauren. Welcome, everyone. Like Lauren said, my name is Ali Kraus. I'm the VP of Marketing at Benetrends Financial, and we love hosting Lunch and Learns with the IFA. This is one of our favorite parts of what we do to not only market Benetrends, but just in general, educate the franchise industry. And while we normally like to host webinars on funding your business, today we wanted to bring in some partners of ours because in the franchise space, partnership is everything. And what we realized when diving into this topic is that franchising is a cyclical version of an ecosystem. And together, from franchisor to supplier to franchisee, we make up this beautiful world of franchising. So I am so excited for this panel today because we think it's a really unique discussion from all lenses of the franchise industry. So I'm going to introduce our panelists here. Here are all three of our amazing panelists today. I'm going to ask them to introduce ourselves, but just a quick little background on myself. I've been at Benetrends for about 2.5 years now. Before that, I've had experience with Entrepreneur Magazine, and before that, I was with a franchisor called Celebrity School for about 4 years. So I've loved experiencing the differentiators between franchisors and suppliers in the industry. And only now, after my time at these three incredible franchise systems, am I really beginning to understand how important it is that we work together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend in franchising, Marissa, CEO at TES. Marissa, please give us a quick background on yourself.
Sure. Yeah, thanks so much, Ali. Excited to be here. So my name is Marissa Frois, and I have the honor of serving as the CEO of the Entrepreneur Source. For those that don't know, the Entrepreneur Source is a franchise in itself. So we do have franchisees that are our career ownership coaches, Dan being one of them. He'll introduce himself in just a minute. And our career ownership coaches are helping individuals explore what's next outside of the W-2 life. So they're taking them on a really comprehensive coaching experience. And then one of the paths they may look at from there is franchise ownership. And then at that point, we have many different franchise possibilities that we work with. So our coaches could showcase a few of those brands to their clients, and then they may decide to invest in a franchise opportunity from there. In addition to that, we have fantastic funding members that we work with and different resource partners as well.
Thanks, Marissa.
You're
Dan,
welcome.
I'm gonna turn it over to you. At Benetrends, we're so thankful you came into our life many years ago when we funded your own business. Give us a little background on yourself and how you came to be in this seat today.
Thank you, Ali. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan Prendergast. I live in Mebane, North Carolina, which is close to Chapel Hill. I have been a career ownership coach for 16 years. We'll start my 17th year soon. Previous to TES, I was in the hotel business. For 23 years, I worked with Marriott, and really after Marriott moved me 14 times in those 23 years, I reached a point in my career where my lovely wife said, I'm not moving anymore. So if they want you to go open up a new hotel, go right ahead. Plus, I was at a point in my career where I really wanted to spend the next 20 years in my career not working for somebody, but figuring something out on my own and controlling my own destiny. So I started with TES in 2008 and have not looked back since.
Dan, I love that you said some really classic keywords of great franchise owners in there, like not working for somebody, controlling your own destiny. It's the most perfect version of how somebody enters franchising. And so if you had a song to sing those 14 states that you've moved to, I bet you could teach some kindergartners some really cool state rhymes.
I could. And there's one more thing that's important. Keeping your wife happy is extremely important
Happy
too.
wife, happy life.
You
Yeah.
got that.
all these nugget takeaways from today. Thank you for that backstory, Dan. I also love that you did come from the hotel business, and while career ownership coaching in the franchise industry may have been a pretty big change for you, we know that hotels are also part of that chain. So I'm interested in more about your story, and we'll cover that in a little bit about how that shift really felt and what the major changes were for you as a career owner. Todd, I'm going to turn it over to you last as our franchisee on the call right now. Can you give us some background on yourself and introduce yourself to our listeners today?
Absolutely, Ali. Thank you for inviting me to the call. Yeah, my name is Todd Harris. As Ali stated, I am a franchisee owner with Restoration One, and I'm in the Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina area. Uh, I guess my journey to franchising started about 7 years ago, and actually that was through a relationship that I had with Dan, and we'll plug into that a little bit later on. But it came from a corporate position with a public technology company, and I went through a layoff about 7 years ago, and then made the decisions to start looking into the possibility of franchises, and so that's how that began.
Fantastic. Thanks, Todd. And like you said, I know we're going to get deeper into your story because it really is fascinating to dig in and understand how people have made that shift from corporate America to franchising. All right, we're going to
Absolutely.
take it off. And I'm going to start with you, Marissa, because as the CEO of your brand at TES, we really want to dig deep into what understanding the franchise ecosystem really means. So we have this interconnected role of franchisors, partners of any kind, whether that be funding or HR and payroll, and the relationship with our franchisees. Can you speak to that a little bit and really explain what being interconnected with those roles mean as a CES, as a CEO of your brand?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would be happy to. So, of course, probably like most on this call, we want to really make sure that as a franchisor, we are providing our franchisees with all of the resources that they need to be successful. So, this means really fantastic partners that for us understands the TES way and will treat our clients in the same manner that we would. So, what we do as the franchisor is we make sure that we are vetting and then providing education to those franchisor members and partners that we work with. And then at that point, we're ready to put them in front of our franchisees or our career ownership coaches. We give our franchisees and our members and our strategic resource partners a ton of opportunities to collaborate with each other and learn about each other so that they can best support the needs of our clients. That collaboration can happen through various different ways, whether they're conferences, both in person or virtual, or webinars, or phone calls, or virtual happy hours that we posted. So there's plenty of opportunity to really build those relationships, right? We never want our coaches to be the experts in the different brands that they may be working with, or certainly be the funding experts to their clients. But what we do want are really strong partners that will collaborate with our franchisees, learn about the needs of their clients, and then create a really fantastic experience for those clients. So we would not be a successful franchisor if it weren't for our successful franchisees, and our franchisees can't be successful if it isn't for us helping to build those really strong partnerships that have the same goals in mind. So it really does come full circle all the way around.
Marissa, can you dig a little deeper into what it means to vet partners? It's such a crucial step in the franchise building portion of our world. And many times you'll hear franchisors or coaching networks like TES have multiple people in each of those buckets. I always hear the sweet spot is two to three contractors, 2 to 3 people in HR, 2 to 3 people in funding. You talked a little bit about vetting and making sure that there's clarity to your coaches, to your franchisees around who those people are. But what does vetting look like to you? And do you have any tips for franchisors out there that are looking to either build those partner sheets that they pass out to their potential franchisees, or how can they start fresh if they notice one is maybe not following their values?
Sure. Yep. So for us, vetting is probably going to look a little different than maybe other networks. But first, we want to just take a look at what we have for our own membership to make sure that we're not oversaturating, whether it's a specific industry that we have there. But then as we connect with those different members, we will take a look overall at the health of their business, whether it's looking at their franchise disclosure document or maybe item 19 information that they have there. And then the next phase there is interacting with them and really educating them on the TES way. We actually have our own sort of education course that we ask members to go through. It's called a 3Cs program. And the purpose of that is to really make sure that they're going to interact with our clients in the TES way. So we're a safe space to provide education, awareness, and discovery on those different possibilities available to them. So when we hand them over to those franchisor members, we want to make sure that the client is going to have that same experience. So there's a few different things that we do, a couple of which are unique to the Entrepreneur Source.
And Marissa, last question for you, because as a supplier myself, I know there's many suppliers on this call right now, possibly wondering the same thing. And my question to you is, as a franchisor specifically, how do you best like to meet and build a relationship with a brand new supplier?
So that could look, we could look at that a few different ways. So it's going to be a few different things. So first and foremost, if we could build those in-person relationships, we love to do that. So we're at a bunch of different events where we could actually meet the people that we might partner with, maybe have lunch and get to know each other on a different level. And again, explain the TES unique differentiators. But we have a ton of virtual ways that we can interact with those different resource partners as well, whether they're, again, virtual webinars that we're doing or meet and greets and things of that nature. So that's another way that we can connect and then build those relationships with our potential resource partners. And then word of mouth too. So if we already have a bunch of trusted resource partners that we work with, we know they're going to bring in additional trusted resource members. So word of mouth and partnership is a really big deal as well.
Yeah, and everything you just said, I'm hearing relationships too. You talked about in-person relationships, and we live in this big virtual world now, but with 50 to 100 franchise events a year, if not more, there's plenty of opportunities to build those relationships. And it's not, in my opinion, just a LinkedIn message or an email.
No,
Thank
totally
you for
agree.
sharing.
Yeah, no problem.
We're going to move on and we're going to talk a little bit about one of Benetrends' very own franchisees himself. This is Daniel Prendergast, as mentioned in our introduction. But Dan, take us back a little bit, because it's so exciting and rewarding to even me as an employee at Benetrends to see somebody that we funded a business for. So talk to me a little bit first about your journey into franchising and how you even found TES.
Sure. So when I walked away from the hotel business in 2008, as I explained earlier, I really wanted to find something that I could feel good about, make an impact, but also have a great lifestyle, help provide that for my family and kids. Okay. So I looked in several different areas. Franchising was just one of them. I was talking with a business broker who was talking to me about existing businesses, looked at several of those, turned them down. One of the meetings I had with a business broker who I kind of developed a good relationship with, he looked at me in that meeting and he started shaking his finger at me. And I'm like, what's this guy getting ready to tell me? Okay. And he said, he's like, you're like a lot of these corporate bigwig washouts. He said, you might have been pretty successful, pretty high up in the corporate world. And he's still shaking his finger. Okay. He's like, but you don't really know that much. And I'm paraphrasing the word that he really used. He said, you don't know squat basically about business ownership. He said, you're a franchise guy. You need to go the franchise route. And he knew that I had come from 23 years with the Marriott Corporation, processes, procedures, world-class customer service, everything. he said, I want you to go talk to a guy that is a friend of mine who has a business called the Entrepreneur Source. Tell him I told you to see him. So I went over, I saw the gentleman who was my coach, and it was one of those life-changing moments where I didn't know how true the words that he really were speaking, how true they really were. And it was one of those times where when he said that, I just kind of didn't know what to say, so I just shut up. Okay. And so if it wouldn't have been for that gentleman, I probably never would have found TES. So I went through the whole TES process at the time as a client. And part of the process that I went through was looking at a couple of other franchises in addition to TES. And really what it came down to at the end was my coach helped me realize that the demonstrated transferable skill set that I needed to be successful as a TES coach was there. But it also, I looked at it from a risk minimization standpoint. Okay. I didn't need to manage anybody else except myself. Okay. I managed 200 people in a hotel before, so that wasn't a problem. So first time out as a business owner, I was looking at risk minimization, but also as a consulting person, consulting segment business, the risk was, or the financial investment was lower. So part of the process my coach took me through was to introduce me to the people at Benetrends. Okay. Provided education on what my different funding options were. Looked at me, I didn't know anything. I was clueless. Okay. But so the person just walked me through step by step, and in the end decided that the Robs was the way to go for me for many reasons. And ever since then, I've been a supporter of Benetrends.
Thank you, Dan. I know that means a lot from our end. And when you first started telling that shaking a finger story, I thought for sure that guy was going to say something horrible to you.
I did
So
too.
you threw me for a loop, but it sounds like he pointed you in the right direction. And what I love the most about your story is that you put trust into your coach, just like Todd puts trust into his franchise system. And so that's the whole point of systems and processes, like what you learned at Marriott. And so I think when you have a coach who can walk you through, hey, Dan, you might not know what you want to go into, but you don't want to manage people. You're passionate about X, Y, and Z, and help guide you to that path of franchising. I think it's the most beautiful part about what coaches and TES does is you help people understand what's going to make the most sense for them when they're leaving that world. And your world of world-class customer service, as you defined it, transferred perfectly because that's the business that you're in now. And so having those same philosophies has very clearly taken you so far. Dan, my question for you right now too is not just the trust that you put into Benetrends, but how did you feel? Can you explain the way you felt when TES said, here are these partners that you can choose from, you can go to, you can trust to get the things you need? Because I know that's something franchisors are trying to build all the time with their franchisees through that validation process, through the understanding of this is why you can trust our brand. Was there an aha moment or a point in time when you realized I can trust these people?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because it actually matches what I've already written down here. So a lot of it starts with what Marissa said. I had to have great coaching and mentoring from my franchisor in the beginning. Okay, because again, I didn't know anything. I was clueless. So part of that training and mentoring said you need to set aside a certain amount of time every week and do nothing but have relationship building meetings with the franchisors. Okay. Then there's going to be events, as Marissa also said, where you're going to meet them face to face. Okay. There wasn't as many virtual events back then. Okay. But there were more face to face, as Marissa knows. Okay. So it was relationship building, and it was getting out there and reaching out to them and saying, hey, I'm a new TES coach. I want to learn more about you and your brand and how you work with our clients and with our coaches. Can we set up a meeting? So I did that for like a whole year. All right. so what this relationship building does, okay, is it allows you to build trust-based relationships, okay, where I know how a developer or a strategic resource partner like you guys are going to handle my clients, okay? They know what to expect when I bring a client to them because we've worked over and over. So what does this do? This brings tremendous amount of efficiencies, okay? So it allows the collaboration to be very efficient. So part of the efficient collaboration and communication is knowing, the right amount to communicate. You don't want to over communicate. You don't want to under communicate. Clients starting to go through the discovery process, just an email to the developer of the franchise or the funding partner saying, hey, we had a great conversation today. Here's where my client's at. They send us back. Down the road, you get a little bit deeper. We're talking more and more with the developer about the client. We're bringing in other partners too that could be support strategic resource partners. So it's repeated relationship building to where you get to the point where I trust people. I know how they're going to take care of my clients. They know the same thing from me about me, and it becomes very efficient.
The first thing you said when you started to answer me was, I was clueless. And I love that vulnerability from not just you, Dan, but it had to have led to much of your success with TES as a franchisee, because that's the type of entrepreneur that goes into franchising, is one that doesn't want to work for the man anymore, wants to take control over their destiny, like you said earlier. And so I think admitting vulnerability to, I'm new at this and I am clueless and I need to put that immediate trust factor into my franchisor anyways, I think is a fascinating and perfect way of entering this world as a franchisee, because you allowed those systems and processes to be immersed into who you are as a person, because you trusted Marissa and the TES team to teach you and mentor you and educate you, like you said. So I think that's a perfect segue into Todd, because Todd was your client, Dan. So again, back to this whole ecosystem of franchising. Todd, I'm going to bring it back to you now, because tell us how you left corporate America and found Dan. You mentioned this on the introduction slide, but you found franchising coincidentally also. So give us a little bit of how your seeking guidance came the same way Dan's did.
Sure, Ali. I would restate that. I would say probably corporate America actually left me, but I work for a public company, a large technology company, and they, as they normally do, year after year, they went through some layoffs, and I was caught up in one of those layoffs one year. So yeah, I left that company. Found myself in my early 50s and had to reinvent myself and figure out what was next. But yeah, Dan and I ended up meeting each other through a mutual acquaintance. And he introduced me to Dan, and that kind of opened my eyes to what the possibility might be with business ownership and more specifically with franchising. So he and I started to meet and talk about this. And, he took me through the QA process basically to kind of weigh what my skills would be, what my needs are, et cetera, and what this possibility may be. And as we went through that interview process, we narrowed that down to the home services, and then further narrowed that down to a property management company that I now have part in, which is Restoration One. So for folks that do not know the brand, Restoration One is an emergency response company. So we deal with commercial and residential properties that have had some type of disaster. Usually it's water leaks, flooding in a property. It could be fire, smoke, cleanup that needs to happen, doing mold inspections, mold remediation as well. So I've been with Restoration One going on 7 years, and own a couple of franchise locations in the Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina area. And it was complete, it was complete 180 for me because, like I said, I was in a technology company and really did more marketing and sales. So my path to R1 was quite unexpected, but I find myself here, and I'm quite happy that I made the choice. One of the things too that Dan and our conversations really had to bring me through is just how am I going to finance this? Because again, I was in a position of being laid off, and as he educated me, and we discovered, I could do this through my own 401k retirement and through the vehicle of Rob's to actually set up financing and allow myself to get started with Restoration One. So yeah, that's been my path here over the past 6 or 7 years.
Todd, you rambled off all those services from Restoration One so smoothly and beautifully. I bet your franchisors marketing team especially would be very proud of you, first of all. But I was like, wow, that was impressive. And obviously you've been there 7 years, but if you could look back 10 years, could you ever see yourself being able to do that? And you obviously fell in love with this brand, but you somehow got to that from corporate America. And I think that's incredible. And that's hard for someone to picture themselves in an industry that they are completely unfamiliar with.
No, I can't say I saw myself there. I was kind of the corporate guy, and the company I worked for was actually a great company, great benefits. So I certainly could have seen myself retiring through that. But as they say, one door closes and one door opens, and that was definitely my case. But with franchise ownership, being a business owner is a struggle. And I don't think anybody will tell you that it's easy, but it can certainly be rewarding and hopefully even more rewarding, as you reach your goals over the year and figure out what the path to retirement is.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about business ownership. Did you have any experience at all from the time you left corporate America to going into Restoration One? You obviously learned very quickly, very seamlessly, all the products and offerings and services because you had some experience in sales and marketing. But how about the business ownership piece, and how did that change, and how did you pick up on that?
Yeah, that was I had kind of a unique experience in a gap year. So after I was laid off with the corporate company I was talking about, I actually took some time to travel to the country of Belize with a goal of actually buying a vacation home there. And while I was there, I ended up buying a sort of a rundown coffee shop and actually converted that into a place that's called the Coffee Bar and ran that for a couple of years on the island of Amber Geese, which is a kind of a destination place for those that scuba dive and deep sea fish and things like that. But that kind of a unique experience, but that did whet my appetite for what it may be or like to, actually build and maintain a business. So I'm lucky I got out of there and was able to sell the business and come out with a positive, but it was a fun experience.
Yeah, so unique. You've had multiple 180s. Todd, I want to, with just a few minutes left, I want to focus a little bit on building the right team because it is always topic of conversation with franchisees, and especially in the franchising industry with the way the world is now post-pandemic and this virtual life, and your business is obviously very not virtual. So how do you build the right team? You gave me this incredible analogy of the 90-day dating period. Can you share what that means to you and how you created that and what building the right team has successes or failures or anything you can share there for us?
You bet. Yeah, building a team of employees is very difficult, as any business owner, small business owner, et cetera, will tell you. And it continues to be a challenge because you've always, want to attract the right people that are not just independently good based on their own skill set. You want them to be attractive as a team player as well, because you're trying to build a culture and environment where people want to stay, where they want to work, where they're having fun, where they're doing the things that matter to them. So for us, we've kind of coined a phrase. We call it just a 90-day period, but basically it's a probation period where we tell oncoming employees, we're going to date you and you can date us. And at the end of that 90-day dating period, we'll analyze the relationship and see if it's been successful and if it's something that we want to continue doing. But that gives us both, kind of the out, if you will, to make sure it's a good fit all the way around.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that's a great little nugget for everyone to take away today, and keep that 90-day window open, because so oftentimes, even when we switch jobs, you want to get right into it and plow through things in the first 30 days. But I think 90 is definitely more realistic for learning who you are, who your brand is, what you're doing, and how those relationships are building. So thank you for sharing that.
You bet. Thank you.
I'm going to turn it over to Q&A real quick with our last minute left. Marissa, we had a question come in for you, actually. If a brand is brand new to franchising, how can they get a hold of someone at TES if they're interested in more information about coaching?
Yep, absolutely. And we're happy to work with brands that might be emerging or more seasoned brands. So definitely reach out to us. You can reach out to me first if you want. I'll put my email in the chat, and then I could direct you to the right person from there.
That's great. Our next slide is also going to have our LinkedIn pages. So I
Oh,
know
perfect. There you go.
too.
Yep.
And then Todd and Dan, this question, last one we have time for because we're a minute over, was for either of you or both of you. Any really beautiful piece of advice or thing you would do differently in your business ownership, specifically as both of you being franchisees, that you would recommend to somebody who is looking to be a first-time franchisee?
Todd, do you want to take it or do you want me to?
Well, our answers may parallel, but like you were saying, networking, talking to other folks, getting input, talking to people that have been there, finding out what their stories are, what the best practices are, what the strategies are. Any way that you can educate yourself going in is huge.
And the networking piece is huge. You have to learn how to be a good pay it forward, giver's gain networker. The other thing too, most of us come into being a franchisee, we're really high performers. We've been very successful in our previous careers, and that often leads to us setting too high of expectations where we expect to perform better than is what is realistically possible. So you gotta realize you're doing something new. And even with great coaching and great support, like our franchisors, Todd and I, you're still not that good in the very beginning. Okay. You're clueless, right?
Mm-hmm.
So don't set the bar too high. Just take little pieces of progress at a time.
Great closing thoughts. Appreciate that, both of you. If you'd like to connect with any of the four of us on LinkedIn, I'll leave the screen up for the next minute here. These are QR codes directly to our LinkedIn pages. You can also email myself or Lauren for contact information of any of us here.
Thank you. Thank you all so much, Ali, Marissa, Dan, and Todd. This was excellent content, excellent feedback from all of you. We really do appreciate it. Again, this webinar was recorded, and along with the presentation deck will appear on our website early this evening. You'll be able to find that at community.franchise.org. Thank you very much again to our speakers and the Benetrends team. And again, thank you to everyone for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and healthy. Bye.
Bye.